and visitors, on behalf of Lieutenant General Matthew W. McFarland, Commanding General of America's First Corps and JBLM, and Command Sergeant Major Jonathan E. Refferer, Command Sergeant Major of America's First Corps and JBLM, we welcome you to today's retirement ceremony. In attendance today's ceremony are Colonel Lynch, Colonel Knight, Colonel Cruz, and Colonel Lamb. Coming from Maryland, we have Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Campbell's parents, Stephen and Patricia Campbell. Also in attendance is Lieutenant Colonel Campbell's wife, Lucretia, and daughter Anaya, as well as family friends Melissa Maines and Chris and Beth Rankins. We thank you all for being here to honor Lieutenant Colonel Campbell on this momentous occasion. Today, the men and women of the United States Army and America's First Corps thank Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Campbell for his years of distinguished, faithful, and dedicated service to our country. The presiding official for today's ceremony is the First Corps Fire Support Officer, Colonel Grady Lowe. Colonel Tim Lynch, commander of 17th Field Artillery Brigade and First Corps Fiscord, will now give opening remarks.
Okay, all right. Hey, so thank you all for being here today. This is a super important moment for Tom Campbell, Lucretia, and Anaya. I thank you so much for joining us. I think if you looked across the crowd, what you would find is just a lot of people that have crossed paths with Tom Campbell and your family. And Tom, you leave an impression on everybody that you engage with. I'll tell you, I met Tom out in the back 40 when he was actually my OC. When I was my first 2 or 3 months in battalion command, Tom came out and OC'd me, and he walked up, and I was like, man, who is this guy? And then he started talking to me, and I was like, holy smokes, this guy's super smart. Only to find out that he'd done SAMS, he did CGSC, he was selected for that, then he was selected for SAMS, hand-selected for SAMS. Then he was selected to go to the 18th Airborne Corps and serve as a planner, and then he wound up OCing me. And I'll tell you, the feedback he gave me really kickstarted my success in battalion command and really helped me see myself, which, Tom, you were very, very good at. And you are an excellent teammate. And I'll tell you, the people that are in this room today, they're recognizing you obviously for the service to our nation, but they are recognizing you because you are a good dude and an excellent teammate. And then I'd just like to thank you, Lucretia, for everything that you've done for our Army as well, because Tom cannot do this alone, and it is incredibly important that you've been by his side, and then everything you've done to support our soldiers on base. There's just not enough words to say thank you.
Thank you.
So if you could just take a moment, and on behalf of the Campbell family, just give them a warm round of applause. Okay, and thank you, Grady. I really appreciate for just allowing me to open this up. Okay, cool. Super proud of you. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the invocation given by the Headquarters and Headquarters Battalion Chaplain, Captain Snyder, and remain standing for the playing of the National Anthem.
I invite you to pray with me according to your own faith tradition. We gather today in respect and gratitude. Gratitude for a career forged in commitment. Gratitude for a family who bore the weight of a career of sacrifice and service. Gratitude for an officer whose fire's expertise strengthened the lethality of this Army and the heart of our nation. Today we honor years marked not just by time, but by the sacrifice that pricks even the stoutest heart. Early mornings, long deployments, longer goodbyes, uprooted comfort, courage planted in new soil. We thank you for the patriotism that carried him forward, not loud or boastful, but steady and faithful. A love of country not expressed in words alone, but in competence, character, and quiet resolve. We acknowledge the many miles traveled across oceans, continents, across seasons of peace and war. And as the rains nourish this land and the mountains remind us of what stands firm, may the legacy of his sacrifice and service nourish the soldiers and officers he mentored by his example. May it stand as a fixture and a testament to what duty requires. And as this season of sacrificial service closes, grant him a fresh spring, filled with purpose, recreation, and rest. And may he never forget that his sacrifice remains an irrevocable assurance to the preservation of democracy and the American way of life. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At this time, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Colonel Grady Lowe, the 1st Corps Fire Support Officer.
Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, to the Campbell family, I'm honored to be here and a part of this ceremony. An event with a simple yet a profound reason: to recognize an exceptionally professional officer, planner, and friend. Today we celebrate Lieutenant Colonel Tom Campbell's remarkable career of more than 20 years of service to our nation. Before I begin, I want to recognize Tom's family. To his wife Lucretia, who we spoke with earlier, and their daughter Anaya, a special welcome to you. Thank you for being a part of the service to our nation, and we all know that being in the military is never a solo journey. There's an age-old truth that no military career is ever that solo journey, that behind every successful soldier stands a supportive family who shares the sacrifices of service. Often little talked about, it's the family who carries much of that burden. The time lost during long and often unpredictable work days, the time spent apart, single parenting during TUI trips, and deployments that can last days, weeks, months, or a year at a time. From my personal interactions with Lieutenant Colonel Campbell, I can say with certainty that he's no exception to this truth. Your commitment, your strength, love, and unwavering support have been the quiet force behind Tom's success, and we're deeply grateful to both of you. When I was asked to speak today, I struggled first with how do you capture and articulate 20 years of service in a few minutes? As I worked through several drafts of this speech, I quickly realized you cannot simply list accomplishments. A career like Tom, it deserves more than bullet points. It deserves a story. And if you personally know Tom Campbell, you know he appreciates a good story. In fact, during my time here at 1st Corps, I'm fairly certain he's read at least 25 to 30 books in the last 18 months alone. Therefore, it seems fitting today that my remarks be structured like a book reviewing his career. Let's call this book the Campbell Doctrine, a small salute to Tom's deep knowledge of doctrine and SAMs that Colonel Lynch talked about. It's a 20-year edition defined by patriotism, planning, and professionalism. And like any great book, it needs a table of contents. In this story, chapter 1 is the foundation. Chapter 2 is how he's the architect of the Pacific. Chapter 3 is Tom's crucible. And chapter 4 is where we look at the next volume. Chapter 1, the foundation. Every story starts somewhere. Tom's began in Pennsylvania. But the writing of this book started when he was commissioned as a field artillery officer from Norwich University in May of 2006. Lieutenant Colonel Campbell's first assignment took him to Fort Drum, New York, where he served with the 2nd Battalion, 15th Field Artillery, and deployed twice to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. After completing the captain's career course, he arrived at Joint Base Lewis McChord for the first time and was assigned as a battalion fire support officer in 1st Battalion, 37th Field Artillery. Here, he'd be selected to deploy again, this time to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. He returned and later commanded Charlie Battery for 137, and alongside this professional journey came a personal milestone. In 2017, Tom met and married Lucretia, and together they began building the family that now includes their daughter and I. Tom continued sharpening both his intellect and leadership as a combined arms instructor at Fort Rucker, followed by Command and General Staff College that you heard Colonel Lynch talk about, and then the prestigious School of Advanced Military Studies, or SAMS. For those unfamiliar with SAMS planners, think of them as the Jedi Knights of military planning. Following SAMS, he was assigned to the infamous 18th Airborne Corps at Fort Bragg, where he again deployed to Iraq in support of Combined Joint Task Force Operation Inherent Resolve. While in the 18th Airborne Corps, Tom also served as the executive officer for 321 Field Artillery and the 18th Field Artillery Brigade. This long and honorable road, marked by deployments, scholarship, and family growth, is what led him back here to JBLM, where in 2021, he and his family settled nearby in Edgewood, Washington. Chapter 2, the architect of the Pacific. Tom's return to JBLM marked what ultimately be the defining chapter of his career. Serving within the 1st Corps Fire Support Enterprise, Tom became the driving force behind 16 major multinational exercises, events that you all know the names of: Cobra Gold, Talisman Sabre, Yama Secura, Freedom Shield, and others. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Campbell was selected to serve as a senior fires representative during Yama Secura 89, continuing his role as a key planner shaping operational readiness for America's 1st Corps. In 2024, he deployed again as part of a YS tasker assigned to the G-35 for CJTF Operation Inherent Resolve. What was originally intended to be a 6-month assignment ultimately became 7 or 8 months. His co-worker Matt Carl shared this personal story about that deployment that I think captures Tom's systematic approach. After Tom arrived in Kuwait, Matt said that on the first day of every month, he would receive an email asking about the status of Tom's replacement. Month after month, the answer was the same: no replacement yet. Eventually, after several reclamas from the 7th Infantry Division, that replacement finally arrived, and Tom came home. That story may seem small, but it says a lot about Tom Campbell. He's methodical, organized, and always looking one step ahead. Upon returning to JBLM, Tom was assigned as a Deputy Fire Support Coordinator in the Corps Fire Support Element, where he would work during Warfighter Exercise 2502, and his work would prove instrumental. During that exercise in Japan, I personally observed Lieutenant Colonel Campbell help integrate a trilateral, Australia, Japan, and the US, targeting enterprise while leading the transition of our targeting meetings from a traditional and time-consuming PowerPoint-based process to a far more efficient digital one using Maven Smart Systems. This modernization proved so effective that it contributed to a core performance which is widely considered the most successful warfighter executed across the Army in over a decade. Having served alongside Tom as a fire support officer here at 1st Corps, I can say without hesitation that his planning, operational design, and staff work has had a direct impact on synchronizing fires across the Indo-Pacific theater and strengthening the readiness of our Corps. That's not just staff work, that's strategic impact. Chapter 3, the Crucible. Every great story has a chapter that reveals the true character of the protagonist. When I arrived here, I'll admit, I misread Tom. I saw a serious, intensely focused officer who always seemed locked into the task at hand. At first, my impression was he might be a little bit bitter. I was wrong. What I eventually realized was that it wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. Tom Campbell simply refuses to waste time. What I initially misinterpreted was actually one of his greatest strengths. He's one of the most candid and efficient professionals I've ever worked with. And that brings us to his crucible. In 2025, our fire support element was tasked with executing a high visibility launched effects special user demonstration, or LE SUD. As an organization, we were short on people and the project wasn't originally ours. It was inherited with very little time left and planning time due to a series of shifting taskers where it went from director to director. Well, naturally, when it arrived to me, I gave it to Tom Campbell. And like any good Army planner, he made it very clear that he was going to hate every minute of it. But what did he do? He did exactly what Tom Campbell always does. He systematically built a plan, ran the operational planning group, coordinated across military units and civilian agencies, and ultimately executed an event that hosted more than 30 distinguished visitors from across the Army. What could have been a burden became a flagship demonstration for America's First Corps. That's the central lesson of the Campbell Doctrine. Time and again, we gave him difficult projects, sometimes frankly terrible ones, and every single time, they turned out great. His personal preferences never got in the way of his professional duty. He just executed, day after day. Tom, thank you for never dropping the ball. Chapter 4. As we arrive at this final chapter of the book, where a career officer and warrior of 3 named campaigns, decorated with a Bronze Star Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal, and the Combat Action Badge, sits here today at his retirement ceremony. But the truth is, while this chapter of service may be closing, his story is far from over. A man like Tom Campbell doesn't stop reading. He simply does what I've seen him do countless times over the last 18 months. He starts a new book. With this retirement comes something many soldiers never quite find: time. Time with family, time for reading, time for gardening, and time to pursue new opportunities, including your next chapter as you work towards certification as a paralegal. Your career has been built on commitment, integrity, intellect, and quiet professionalism. You and your family should feel enormous pride in the legacy that you leave behind today. Tom, when my own career comes to a close, I can only hope it might be measured by a book half as impressive as yours, one defined by similar professionalism, dedication, and lasting impact. As your award citation states, your career reflects great credit upon yourself, First Corps, and the United States Army. We collectively wish you and your family the very, very best in the chapters ahead. So on behalf of the Commanding General and the entirety of America's First Corps, we salute you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a round of applause to Lieutenant Colonel Tom Campbell and the remarkable story he's written.
Thank you, sir. Now that Lieutenant Colonel Campbell is retiring, as Colonel Lowe mentioned, he's looking forward to spending more time with his family. He intends to do some more reading, gardening, and pursue a paralegal certification. At this time, we'll present Lieutenant Colonel Campbell with his gift and award. Please remain seated and hold your applause until all presentations have been made. Colonel Lowe will now present Lieutenant Colonel Campbell with his retirement award, pin, and retirement flag. Attention to orders. The Meritorious Service Medal is presented to Lieutenant Colonel Thomas S. Campbell for over 20 years of service. Signed, Joseph E. Escondone, Brigadier General, U.S. Army, Deputy Commanding General.
Now get one without us in it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
At this time, we would like to take a moment and acknowledge Mrs. Campbell for her faithful service to this country and support to her spouse during his time on active duty. Mrs. Campbell will be receiving a certificate of appreciation on behalf of the Chief of Staff of the Army on the occasion of her spouse's retirement from active duty status.
One
Yeah,
without
we
us.
get
At this time, the colonels will present Lieutenant Colonel Campbell the Presidential Certificate of Appreciation. It reads, "For the service in the Armed Forces of the United States of America, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas S. Campbell, I extend my personal gratitude and the sincere appreciation of a grateful nation to you and your patriotic service to our country." Signed, Donald J. Trump, Commander-in-Chief. At this time, the colonels will present Lieutenant Colonel Campbell the Certificate of Retirement. It reads, "To all who shall see these, this is to certify that Lieutenant Colonel Thomas S. Campbell, having served faithfully and honorably, was retired from the United States Army on the 6th day of March 2026. Signed, Randy A. George, General, United States Army, Chief of Staff." At this time, the colonels will present Lieutenant Colonel Campbell the retirement flag.
Here, give me the flag. Mess this up. No, take a picture. Is that right, Sergeant Major? Yes, sir. Okay.
At this time, we'll be presenting his going away plaque from First Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Thomas S. Campbell, United States Army retired.
As I told Ryan before, I didn't prepare any remarks. I'm going to wing it, just like I have most of my Army career. First of all, I really appreciate everybody coming. It means a lot, especially the kind words, Colonel Sir, Colonel Lowe, Colonel Lamar. I appreciate you coming. I know that as we said in my story, I've been here for a little while. So I've run into a lot of people, and I appreciate everybody that can make it. Mom, Dad, I appreciate you coming to this, and it really means a lot that everybody's here for this, and not the wonderful catering that my wife earlier provided for us. There's a lot to say. I've done a lot of things. I've been some places. I appreciate the kind words, and you just have to say, it comes back to a book I read a little while ago when I was in SAMS. Yes, I read a few books there, and also on my own. But it was a book called "Fooled by Randomness," and it talks about where a lot of people think that hey, as I stand here, that I've done all these things, and I was here, and yes, I made all these great plans in 18th Airborne Corps, and I did all the great things, as an OC with Colonel Lynch. But there was a lot of other people there, and I was just the recipient of a lot of those actions. a lot of guys there, sir, with that whole team, and I was just the guy that talked to you the most. The Iversons are here, and Art, I probably said a lot of the same things in 18th FA, but it's the case. The reason I'm here is because of all the people, that were with me. I've been very, very lucky throughout my career to not only have good coworkers, good commanders, good sergeants major. We're telling a story last night. My first 215 FA, my first sergeant major was Sergeant Major Grinston. So learned a lot there, and just had a lot of good people just throughout. So I'm not going to go through it and thank everybody. I just really appreciate everybody coming. It really means a lot. I aspire to what the chaplain said. I would like everybody to know that my career is a beacon for democracy and all these other things, but I know that the machine will roll on and we'll go different places, but I really just hope that everybody remembers. If you do remember me, just remember, hey, if I come up in your head, start reading a book. Just always bring a book everywhere. There's plenty of waiting in the Army. You might as well just pop it out of your pocket and don't waste your time. SRP or wherever you are, CIF. Do that, and I just hope that you remember remember me as a good dude and as a good teammate. If you do that, I really appreciate it. And we'll probably stay here for a while, so keep looking me up, and that's about it. But number one, before we get to the applause though, I just really want to thank again Mom and Dad. I appreciate everything. Couldn't do this again, without a solid foundation. And I really appreciate all the sacrifices you guys made, getting me into those schools and getting me that spot where I could kind of take off in my career. And I especially like to thank Lucretia. We've talked a lot, about kind of, I classify my life into before Lucretia and after Lucretia. And so sometimes it's like, oh yeah, it's only been a few years. Actually, it's been longer than that. We've been together for more than half of my career. I gave Colonel Lowe bad data. We met in 2013. So yeah, that's my fault, sir. So just in case you're doing the math in the crowd.
You married it.
We married in 2017. Yes, married in 2017. I just appreciate everything. It really is. I've done 2 deployments. We've been together, and there's no better way fit anybody could ask for. So I really appreciate that, and especially appreciate Anaya. Even as she's still, she's a lot taller than probably last time most of you saw her, but she's getting bigger, but she's still small, and I appreciate everything. You're the best daughter, and I'm really glad that I can stop doing work trips and spend more time with you and both of you. So again, really appreciate everybody coming. I really appreciate this, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join us in playing the Army Song.
March along, sing a song, we're the army of the free. Count the brave, count the true, who have fought to victory. We're the army and proud of our name. We're the army and proudly proclaim. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's hi, hi, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the cadence loud and strong. For wherever you go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. We would like to thank you all for joining us. Please feel free to join Lieutenant Colonel retired Thomas Campbell and his family and wish him a farewell and congratulate him on a career well done.